I have chosen to do this. There is a goal in sight. Doing this trip without a goal, I think, might be a different, not knowing where you're going. Yeah, that will be a lot harder.
Mr. James Benson King, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
So, you're in the middle of a gigantic bike ride.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you tell the people where you're going from and where you're going to?
So I'm cycling from Dead Horse, Alaska, which is right in the Arctic Ocean, down to Ushuaia, Argentina. So the tip of South America.
Okay. How many kilometers do you figure that is in between, or miles?
It's about 18,000 miles, about 26,000 kilometers. Looking at taking me about a year, I think. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you just started, less than 2 months ago?
Yes. Yep. So started on the 7th of August. So it's been about 45, 50 days. About 40 of that on the bike.
Really?
A few rest days in there as well. I think that's when I met you guys up in Watson Lake. So yeah.
We were just coming off the Nahani.
Yep.
And you're some other lunatic on his own trip.
Yeah, with the bike out front.
What's Dead Horse, Alaska like?
Dead Horse, Alaska it's an oil miner's town. So the only reason it's there is for black gold. And so they created the road in the 70s. I think tourists have only been allowed up there the past 20 years. So there isn't much up there for way of a tourist. Most people drive in, see the end, and then turn straight back around same day. So it's quite expensive. There isn't much there, and it is as flat as a pancake. It's the end of an Arctic shelf. So yeah, there's wildlife in town. There's caribou, some grizzlies, but not much else there apart from oil.
Just tundra.
Tundra, yeah. So it's flat for kind of 200 kilometers south. Winds coming down off the Brooks Range. So the first 2 days of my ride were pretty headwindy. And yeah, not much else.
You had some major problems at the start, did you not? Even before you took one stroke on your bike.
Yeah. I think it was the universe telling me I needed to slow down. So my bike was lost by the airlines for a month. So I flew into Anchorage. No bike to be seen, all my bags as well. So I just had my hand luggage for a month.
How can they lose it? I understand losing it for a day or two.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't make the connection. How can they lose it for a month?
Nobody told me. Yeah. And when my bag and bike finally came, it had 2 airlines which weren't even meant to be involved in the process, just taped all over them.
What airlines were they, do you know?
Swiss Air, it seems, finally got the bags to me. Nothing to do with Lufthansa or Condor. So yeah, they just had Swiss Airline stickers all over it.
So it went from the UK
to Germany. So the only direct flight from kind of mainland Europe to Alaska is from Frankfurt.
And then it just flew around Europe for a month.
Yeah, I don't know where it was. A friend of mine said that she also sent her bike at a similar time. It was meant to go to Madrid and it ended up in Moscow. So
they both begin with them.
That's about all that links them. So there was a lot of problems in Europe with baggage at the time. What
was your plan B if your bike didn't show up?
I was about 24 hours away when they told me of just buying a bike, buying all new gear, and just going with anything I could find and borrow. I'm glad I didn't, because that road really tested me, and knowing what stuff I had and where it was the only thing that got me through at times. Yeah.
So, give us an example of how your gear was specialized for you. Why couldn't you have just gone to, I don't know, the hardware store and bought a $800 mountain bike and a tent off the shelf and a sleeping bag and go?
So you definitely can. I think having comfort in your equipment is definitely important, so that you know. So you could do that as long as you tested it and you were comfortable. The biggest thing for me is knowing that the frame is never going to be an issue. And so the frame that I've got is sock welded. So all of the major joints have another piece of metal welded over the top. And in the UK, we call it bomb proof. So unless you get hit by a bomb, you should be good. Or even if you do. So on some of those gravel roads and going down huge potholes, I know that the bike is good. And that gives you a level of comfort. Even through the wheels they've got, they're tents tested, and then they have more spokes than like a normal bike would do. So the main thing is durability. So it's an expedition style bike rather than an off the frame.
So how much heavier would that be than a bike you get? It sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah. So my full rig is 18 kilograms with nothing else on the bike.
Just for the bike?
Just for the bike. Yeah.
That's a little bit away from the carbon fiber, ultra lightweight racing bikes that you pick up with one finger.
My gravel bike that I ride most at home is 8 kilos.
Okay.
So you've got another 10 immediately on there.
Okay. And other gear? Was that
the total weight of everything? I would say that would vary between 50 to 60 kilograms depending on food and water on the bike.
So you're not towing a wagon behind it; you're just panniers.
Yeah, just panniers. That can feel a bit. I've tried one. It can feel a bit like you're dragging something behind. Whereas when you have the panniers on your bike, you feel a bit more maneuverability, and it kind of feels like you're at least moving one body of weight.
Okay. So what was it like coming over you had to go through the Brooks Range, which is the first mountain range that you encountered?
That was potentially the craziest weather part of my trip. So I was the night before I left to go through the pass. There was one of the first severe weather warnings for Alaska happening in the summer I think they've had 5 in the past 40 years.
Okay.
So I was expecting
not just in the summer, 5 period for the whole year.
Just for the summer period, they've had 5 in the past 40. So I mean, at some point they just stopped sending out warnings because it's covered in snow anyway. But they were expecting a foot of snow the day I was passing through the pass. So I was slightly concerned that I was going to head into a snowstorm. And about half an hour into my day, that's when it started snowing. Didn't stop until I'd summited the pass and was down through the other side. So yeah, it was rough riding. The road they treat with a chemical to hold it together, but that sticks to your fenders. And so every 5 kilometers you're there trying to chisel this stuff away so that you can move. The average temperature that was recorded on my GPS for the day was 2 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so just a touch over freezing.
And that's the average for the day. So I don't even know what it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at the top of the pass. I was riding for 10 hours that day. So the average temperature was 2 degrees.
And you were fresh out of the gate. So your body isn't as tempered as it's going to be later.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't have the fitness at its peak yet. The pass was a struggle. So it was a 600-meter ascent over kind of 40 kilometers, and then 600 meters down on the other side. But
so when you say it was a struggle, obviously a physical struggle, was it a mental struggle as well?
Definitely. Going up, kind of, I've never ridden in those conditions before, so I've never had 60 kilograms worth of weight that I'm having to cycle through. I was only 3 days into kind of riding with all of that weight. Without going back home for a warm shower at night. I'd never cycled in the middle of a snowstorm before. I'd never cycled on slush roads. All of it was new.
And now there are trucks.
Yeah, there are trucks coming past as well. It's definitely an experience. And being from the UK, the elevation we don't too often ride at that elevation. So it was a definite struggle. But the counter side to that is all of the scenery I've never seen before either. So it's very stimulating at the same time. So there's lots to take your mind off it as well.
And from there through the rest of Alaska, what were some of the highlights of Alaska?
So I saw the Northern Lights in Alaska. That was awesome. The rest of the Dalton Highway all of it was a highlight, really. The changing scenery, some of the climbs were awesome. Elevation was definitely a challenge, and a lot of people would think that coming through the Brooks Range might be the hardest part of that road. But once you kind of get south of the Yukon River into the Boreal Forest, it is just up and down. So I think over 2 days we hit kind of 6,000 meters of elevation climb, which For your audience,
6,000 meters.
Yeah. So for cyclists, that's a big amount. And it was tough. Very, very, very tough. The elevation there. After Fairbanks, heading to the border was fairly flat, and so there was a few remote lakes that I camped at, which were like really cool. Other than that, I would say not too much else in Alaska. From there to the border, it was quite calm, and you're just on highway.
Mm-hmm. What's it like sharing the road with? I guess you're sharing the road with like logging trucks as you get further south.
Yeah.
18-wheelers carrying stuff. RVs driven by 80-year-olds. Pickup trucks, because there's nothing else other than a pickup truck up there.
Yep.
You're sharing the road with a lot of things that are going a lot faster than you.
Yeah. I'd say for the large part, the pickup trucks and the semis tend to deal with cyclists okay. They know what to do. The hardest is the RVs and town cars that you start to come across as you head into more populated areas. They don't quite know how much room to give you, and sometimes they'll come quite close to clipping you. There was a few tests on the narrow roads down the Cassia Highway with big semis where they couldn't give me enough room, and then you're sharing the road and dealing with doing what you can. Yeah.
And so there were some close calls on the Cassia?
Yeah, so the main Alcam route had been closed off during this time, so every commercial truck semi was heading along the road with me. And times where there is no hard shoulder for me to ride in and two trucks are passing become a game of what can we do? And sometimes, a few inches between my handlebars and semis, that causes.
What's your right-hand side at that point?
You're coming off into either forests or they have like drop-offs down to. Okay. So, I'm riding as close as I can. Sometimes not even on tarmac anymore. You're already shoved to your limits, and it's either drop-off or forest. Yeah.
So you've been on the road for about 50 days.
Yes.
You were saying earlier that you're anticipating taking another year possibly to make it to the...
Yeah, I think in my head it had initially been 10 months. I think I might end up hitting some bad weather in the south heading into their winter. So I think it might take another year out from here just to wait for it to get to the South American spring.
Well, let's cover your route into South America, through the States, Mexico, Central America, South America in a second. But let's just pause here, because I'm sure people have got a bunch of questions. Like, first of all, how much are you eating a day? And how are you feeding yourself? Because you are the engine to your vehicle at this point. Yeah.
So I eat the same thing back when I'm at home every day anyway. So food regularity doesn't bother me too much. So I'm pretty much eating the same thing every day. So I start my day with oatmeal, dried fruits, any fresh fruit I can get hold of, and peanut butter. Normally bananas, peanut butter, and oatmeal is kind of the bare minimum. And then throughout the day, I kind of gave up the idea of cooking myself lunch, and I snack. So I would say every hour or so I'm having one snack. It's probably summarizes to about 5,000 calories a day. So I'm definitely a few thousand calories under what I should be or could be eating to maintain.
So you figure you're burning 7-ish?
Yeah. I think about 7,000-ish, up to, I would say, 8,000 plus on like the tougher days with a bit more elevation.
Okay, so dumb question. Why aren't you eating 7,000 or 8,000 calories a day?
Purely down to the weight. So you want your bike to be as light as possible. That's the first reason. And then actually the second reason is that sometimes it's just tough to eat that much. The hunger, you are hungry, but there's only so much you can eat before you feel full.
I think there's a reason that bodybuilders drink so many shakes.
Yeah.
Because it's way easier to drink 1,000 calories than it is to eat. Here's 1,000 calories of apples. You can be there for, here's 1,000 calories of apple juice. You can down that in 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason that protein shakes and also in the UK we this thing called Gold Top which is like, it's pretty much cream at the top of the milk. And it's meant to be like first class milk, and a lot of bodybuilders will drink that.
Okay. Basically just cream.
There's cream at the top, and then you break the seal and you're sipping through cream.
Right.
But yeah, full fat milk with cream at the top.
And of course, anything you encounter along the road, muffins, cinnamon buns, roadkill, that's all fair game.
That's all. Nothing's off the table. My favorite was coming into Prince George. I'd run out of food. It was the first time I'd done it, just because there was distances between towns that I hadn't encountered for, and I was looking for anything and everything. Not too many cars passing. So I pulled into this unsuspecting farmer family's house, and the only thing that they had for sale at the time was some strawberries. So they poured me a bowl of strawberries, and I just devoured like a full punnet in front of them. They had no idea what was going on. Anything and everything, and sometimes you don't get to pick what you're having, so you just eat it all up.
Sorry, I only eat organic, vegan, gently raised, greens.
That's not, my dietary, anything that I had before has been placed aside for this trip, just to make sure.
The seafood diet, you see it, you eat it.
Exactly.
So, why are you doing this? Do you have a long history of doing things like this in the UK?
No, so I've started to do a few challenges over the past few years, but it was mainly to prepare for this trip so that I knew I could do it. So a few years ago, I did like a distance challenge where I had to hit distances on 3 or 4 different things. So running, rowing, I wanted to make sure I could do a variety of things. And then that year there's a famous challenge in the UK called Land's End to John O'Groats. So you cycle from the southern tip to the most northern tip. And I did that in 11 days. So that kind of let me know that I could do the physical side of it. And then the one that I did last year was slightly more sadistic. So it was at the perimeter of my county in a day, which is 333 kilometers.
Okay.
And about 5,000 meters of elevation. So that was purely
pretty brutal.
Yeah. That was purely to test myself that I know I could do even the toughest of days.
And that was all with an eye towards doing this trip now?
This was always in the back of my head, to push myself into these areas to make sure I could do this. Yeah. Get me in shape.
Well, so you must have learned a lot about yourself physically, mentally, and also just equipment-wise.
Yeah, so the biggest concern after those things was my hands. I actually, for 8 months, lost sensation in some of my fingers, because of the pressure on the bike from riding consistently. So it was a big concern coming into this trip that if I couldn't look after those, that I might actually have to cut it off before I've even started. So I invested a lot of time looking into what gloves I should wear, which you might be able to see the tanning situation from
the reverse farmer tan.
yeah. So those gloves are on all day, every day, just to protect the nerves in the lower end of my hand.
And how's that working?
Perfectly. Couldn't. I hadn't tested them out for extended periods of time, just because in day-to-day life you struggle to do that anyway. So it was a big win when after a week or two of riding there was no numbness at all.
But you wouldn't have found out about that problem if you hadn't done those challenges.
True. Yeah.
It does speak to the importance of, for anything like this, to try and test as much as you can. And the times that I've screwed myself with my gear is, you show up at the lake and you go, I really should have tested this because this thing works only 50% as well as it's supposed to, or it's unusable and it's going to get consigned to the fire or whatever it is. Yep.
Yeah, the other thing that I have a Garmin for my trip, so going backcountry hiking and stuff, you want to have something with you. And so this ride is no different. But I've heard some horror stories of people not kind of testing it or knowing how to use it properly and then getting into situations where they then really need it. So I haven't tested the SOS button yet, but I know how it works and can send messages where I need to.
Well, and hopefully you never will. I mean, you know how to use it, and hopefully that'll be good enough. You're not using that for your maps, are you? I mean, you're...
No, I mean, that was somebody else asked me that as well. No, I mean, the only direction that I've needed so far until I got to Vancouver was south.
Yeah.
It's one road. You're either going left or right when I pick a route. But for the majority of the time, it's been very simple. Just keep going. I think now that I'm hitting some cities, I might start to need to use it, but I have like a bike GPS for that kind of stuff.
And how are you finding it mentally? Because that's a lot of alone time. That's a lot of, I mean, you're obviously a very social guy, and I know that you're meeting people along the way. I mean, I guess I'm a case in point. We met up in Watson Lake when we were coming off in Nahani, and here we are, 2,500 kilometers away.
Yep.
Just had dinner. It's not like you're sitting in the corner rocking in an autistic position.
Yeah.
So how are you handling the huge amounts of alone time?
Some people have spoken to me about when they start biking, and they're like, what do you think about it? Like, thoughts are coming. I quite enjoy it. I find it meditative when I'm cycling on the bike. As you say, I am quite social, so I kind of feel like I recharge when I talk to people, and I find anybody and everybody on the highway. Some of my best moments have been conversations on the side of the Dalton, which is meant to be the most remote part of the world. So I will always find somebody to talk to. And I find that there's enough of those conversations throughout the day, even in the middle of nowhere, to keep me at a good level. The other thing is I'm so tired at the end of the day that by the time I've cooked and gone back to my tent, I normally don't want to talk to too many people anyway. So a lot of people have asked, are you lonely? I'm not lonely at all. But dealing with it mentally, it hasn't been tough so far. I find that there are enough people along the way to engage with and interact with that it hasn't been difficult. Having said that, I've got a few cyclist friends who are cycling through the Middle East and into Asia, and they're struggling with it a lot more. So I think it could change with a language barrier. So when I head down to Spain, and I can't do podcasts with people that I met 2,500 kilometers ago, and I can't just go into a petrol station and have a conversation with somebody. Maybe it might be a different conversation then.
Trying to learn Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but why don't you think those? How long are you on bike each day? 8 to 10 hours?
Yeah. I'd say
on a good day.
Yeah. So I'd say 10 hours would be the average travel time. Maybe 7 to 8 hours of that is moving time.
Yeah. So why don't you think? I grant you that you're not lonely, and I have similar experiences. But why don't you think you're lonely?
It's a good question. I hadn't thought about why.
Because that's a lot of people's vision of.
Yeah.
That's probably the first question they ask is bears.
Yeah.
And then the next question is, what are you eating? And then the third question is probably, are you lonely? I hadn't thought about that at all. I guess a few people that I hold in high regard, when I've spoken to them, have said I'm quite stoic. And so I guess with that comes mental strength. I don't know. Maybe you're just comfortable in your own mind, and I think a lot of people would seek for comfort, and maybe I'm mentally testing myself, and that just it creates like a resolve. I sometimes think it might have to do with, like, if you were locked in a room for no reason, for 8 to 10 hours a day, and it's not your own choice, then it's like waking up in the middle of the night with tremendous pain in your chest and in your legs and going, I'm dying, versus getting off the Airdyne bike doing sprints or the rowing machine doing sprints, going with the same pain, but no, there's a reason why there's pain here. And now, that was a good workout. In one, I'm dying, I'm scared. And the other, that was a good workout. So you've chosen this.
You're right. Part of it is the goal and the choice. I have chosen to do this. There is a goal in sight. Doing this trip without a goal, I think, might be a different, not knowing where you're going. Yeah, that will be a lot harder, for sure.
here's your closed room and an exercise bike, and you have to ride it for 8 hours, and we're not telling you how long this is going to go on. That would suck.
I'm tapping out.
Yeah. So you're raising money. One of the things you're doing is you're raising money. What cause are you raising money for?
So I'm raising money for a charity called Cardiac Risk in the Young, sometimes called CRY. So it's a UK-based charity which focuses on raising funds and raising awareness for cardiac risk predominantly in children. So they have research facilities. They screen kids for cardiac problems, and then they also provide support to families as well that have had instances of cardiac problems.
And why have you chosen that?
So I had a heart condition when I was a kid called supraventricular tachycardia. So it was essentially an extra pathway in my chest which caused palpitations at random times. So we could be sat here filming a lovely podcast and all of a sudden I'd be in a lot of pain because my heart would be going 200 beats a minute.
So you just feel it start beating?
Yeah. And it kind of... There's certain things I could do to control it. So normally it would happen if I was hot or tired. So you're trying to cool yourself down. But as a kid, it's obviously you don't know the rules, you don't know how to deal with it, and it can be quite scary. So I had my first operation when I was 7, and it was unsuccessful. And then had the second radio ablation when I was 16, and that was successful.
When you say ablation, what do you mean?
So they go in through your aorta, normally in your leg, send a camera in, and then essentially freeze away the problem. So they froze the additional pathway, and it can no longer use that electrical route.
Has that affected you in any other way other than curing the problem?
No, for a few years after, I kind of had ghost symptoms, so I would still feel the sensation of it. But that's as I've kind of grown out of those, and all fine now.
And you've been active in sport since then?
Yeah, so there was my parents we made the decision after I had that first operation to kind of not do sports when I was a kid. And then after a while, I started to grow a bit, and my friend, one of my best friends, was like, "You should come and play rugby." And I was
where we slam our heads into other people's chests.
Yeah. My mum was like, "Well, we stopped you from playing football or soccer, so you're not going to play rugby." But after kind of grinding her down for months, she let me go play, and it kind of it did the world of good for me because I was a bit of a wuss at the time, and then I kind of found my size in that game. So it definitely made me into kind of who I am today. But it did provide problems. So I sometimes I collapse on the pitch and stuff because I'd have obviously being tired in the game.
So the atrial fibrillation would kick in and...
Yeah. So I've had attacks on the pitch. I did a rugby tour to South Africa when I was 16 and the heat was so strong that I had some there as well. So it wasn't smooth sailing, and that provided my mum and dad with worry as well.
I bet.
But yeah, we're kind of it's been fine since I was 16. Yeah.
But that's all like sprint based, and that's very, very different from what you're doing now. Yeah. I could imagine I would if it had still been a problem, it might still occasionally crop up. The biggest concern is that the problem is hereditary. So by the time I got it from my dad, and by the time he was 27, he didn't know he had a problem, and so he was in the gym doing like these weird cardiovascular sprints and then chest presses. He loved basketball, so he was trying to create bigger space in his lungs. And whilst doing that, you're obviously absolutely knackering yourself, and then heavy lifting. He triggered an episode in something that he didn't even know he had. And for 8 hours, his heart was going over 200 beats a minute. Wow.
And they couldn't stop it. So essentially they had to
try live shocking him.
Yeah. So his heart didn't beat for like a minute or two because they had to stop it and restart
with the paddles and I've heard that's quite painful.
Yeah. I can't imagine it's great. So I think after they had done that, they'd stopped it. They then had to operate. So I think that would be the major concern is the older you get, kind of the more riskier it gets. So I think these exercises may not have been a problem, but you risk that.
Right.
Yeah, the big attack.
Well, I mean, if only he had been screened as a kid.
And that's it. So as well as myself having those problems, I also unfortunately lost a friend at university. And their family wanted to raise funds for this charity. And kind of once I'd found out about this charity, that's when I knew I wanted to.
What happened to him, her?
He was at home around Christmas time, a break from university, was just watching TV with his parents and family and just passed away. Yeah, the heart murmur. He would have been 21.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it was tough. He was one of my American football teammates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brutal for the family. I mean, not good for him, but
no, yeah, not good for. Yeah, it was a big shock, and for the team, it was a big deal as well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's amazing how many heart conditions come out under that, especially that. I think that sprint-based training.
Yeah.
I mean, I think and I don't know what I'm talking about here, but the sort of long, slow jogging or biking, I think that
can build the fitness, but the intenseness, the contact probably didn't help in rugby either.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a difference between the tide you would get after like a steady paced jog to, there was a fitness thing we used to do when training, where you sprint at 800 meters and you got to walk the 800 meters and then you sprint 400 times 2, and then it was 8 100s and it just goes up, and by the end of that you're
done.
Yeah. Definitely different to jogging.
Yeah. So before you came to North America and Central America and South America with the idea of putting in these kilometers, what did you do? Like, what was your...
Very different. So after traveling for a few years, doing all these contact sports, I had a shoulder injury. So I came back to my lovely home in the UK to fix it with the NHS after being quoted to fix it for a lot of money in Australia. Decided to move home. And
do you need a surgery in it?
Yeah. They said it was going to be $15,000 to fix it in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, cool. I'm gonna go home. Thank you for your time. So I moved home and I ended up working for JP Morgan, a bank.
So you got the shoulder fixed through these socialized medicine, or the otherwise known as a civilized healthcare system.
Yeah.
And it's fine now?
Yeah, all good. So it took, I was on the wait list was like a year. And then it kind of took up to a year to rebuild it. But was back in the gym, and lifting, back to my normal self. That was when I started doing these challenges. So my body composition has changed slightly. Less of a big guy now, a bit more, slimmer from the CV.
Oh, see what you are in a year's time. Legs, lungs, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. See how your body dysmorphia kicks in. So you got a job for JP Morgan.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, that's a bit of a shift.
Bit of a swing. So yeah, it was. They have an office close to where I live. I'd done a kind of an internship with them before. And then had a few friends there who kind of got me a job interview. And, I came back from Australia with long hair and a beard. And I was like, I don't think they're going to give me a job here. But they're kind of, the banking industry is progressing in some areas. So it's a steady job for the past 3 years.
And so you're working away at your steady job, but dreaming of this? Yeah.
So this was in my 5-year plan. I was hoping to fix the shoulder, and in my head when I say about now, it's too quick, but I was hoping to have the surgery and be all good to go inside a year. the shoulder wasn't ready. I didn't have enough cash yet. And, multiple things. Hadn't done any research. So I wasn't ready to go after a year. And the job was going well. So I ended up staying. And then the old COVID hit as well, which kind of kept me locked in. But fortunately, by waiting, I managed to save a bit more so I can travel a bit more comfortably. And then also do all of these things that we talked about, test the bike, read into the bike, test my body, test my mind, so that I knew when I set off. I think if I'd have gone after a year, I wouldn't have met you guys, but I definitely would have been less prepared.
So what was the genesis of this trip? Like, what got you thinking about it? So
there's a couple of things. So getting into biking was watching the 2012 Olympics, seeing the British team do so well. It kind of pushed me into wanting to become a cyclist. I wanted to be a track cyclist. This is way different. So less short and sprinty and way more endurance. But that got me into biking. I went traveling for a couple of years in 2016 and met a guy in Myanmar. And he was on a ride from East Pakistan down to Singapore, and he convinced me, he was like, you should do the ride. And I was, I don't really, this route and the heat and all these other things. And immediately after he finished that one, he flew from Singapore to Alaska and just did another.
Oh, really?
And then when he started posting the pictures and sending me and catching up with me over the phone and stuff, I was like, okay, I need to do this one.
So trip envy.
Yeah. Basically that is the genesis. I knew I wanted to, the traveling aspect was good and backpacking was great, but I wanted the physical challenge as well. And the two things kind of marry together in this.
How's the body holding up with all the, repetitive strain?
It's, the first week or two, was a struggle. It's a common symptom in cyclists, where it's, in the patella, so tightness in the patella leads to knee pain, and so there is.
So what's tight?
This muscle here kind of pulls away from your kneecap, and you end up with like pain in the knee.
Okay.
Now the biggest to prevent it is rest. And I didn't have that option, being in the middle of the Dalton with 4 days left and a shit ton of elevation coming. So I just kind of had to do what I could to get through. Stretching then became crucial because that's kind of the only way to combat it. So a lot of stretching in the morning and the evening, ease symptoms, and then taking random drugs from other cyclists is also up there. So a guy on the highway gave me some, it's called a leaf. We don't have it in the UK, so I just had to trust that what he was giving me was good to go. But
I was up for 45 hours after that. I'm pretty sure it was over the counter.
Yeah. There was some side effects. But yeah, he trusted. I trusted him.
I think it's just your standard non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Yeah, not good for your kidneys. Pretty good for pain.
It dealt with it for a while. As I crossed the border into Canada, though, what I did do for a few weeks after was reduce the distances each day. So I'd only do kind of 100, 110 kilometers, and that would mean that I'd have more time to recuperate.
No.
So because of that, after I'd say 3 weeks, it was good to go. And since then, the only thing that causes any pain on like a day-to-day basis is the seat and the rear. Those two, after 80, 90 kilometers each day, will start to get a bit sore, we'll say.
I'm assuming you have the padded bike pants and all that.
Padded bike pants. I'm starting to run out of the cream to help lubricate the area. So we'll have to invest some more of that. But I'm hoping to get some new cycling shorts, maybe through a sponsor, just to
find out who made your gloves and find out if they make cycling shorts with
definitely need to upgrade in that area.
So special unobtainium lined shorts that are simultaneously rock hard on the outside and just molded
super lubey just to support everything. Well,
I There, you got your business plan for when this is all done.
If you can solve that problem, every cyclist will have envy.
Do you have any idea of what you're going to be doing after you're done all this? Are you just going to fly to Southeast Asia and do another trip, or
just do what my friend did? No, I've got a few ideas. I think one is to keep going. So if I can figure out a way to monetize and do some of that, even if it is just enough to keep going for like a year. There are plenty of other places that I would love to cycle and keep going.
Without committing yourself, just off the top of your head, what would be your top 2 or 3 other long trips? So the
major routes for traveling that I would love to do, one is Cairo to Cape Town. So all through Africa. It's just, that seems to me to be the biggest challenge, because at some points you are going through desert. At some points you are going through areas that, haven't seen people from the outside before, don't speak any English whatsoever. And you haven't got ways to converse with them. It just seems like a huge challenge. Again, my friend's already done it, so he's beaten me to it. But some of those experiences, kids in Ethiopia would sprint from their houses to throw rocks at the cyclists. Like you're just dealing with challenges that you can't dream of. And I think for that reason, that sounds like
cycle faster than an angry water buffalo.
Yeah, exactly. Wildlife. There's no set route to it. So for this trip, there are kind of routes that you can follow, but for Cairo to Cape Town, you can pick, like some people swing all the way over to the Western Africa and cycle through there. Some people cut straight through the middle. Some people hug the East Coast. So you can kind of invent whatever you want. There is no set route. Whereas it does feel with this ride at times, there's a comfort in knowing lots of people have done it before. So you can hug the coast, or you can cut right through the middle, but everybody's kind of done it. So you have routes you can follow.
Everybody. What, 1,000 people?
In my echo chamber, everybody's done it. Yeah.
It's easy to lose perspective of these things, because once you get outside the echo chamber, 99% of people think you're insane. And in your own little, self-referential.
Completely.
Oh, good for you. Huh?
It's been nice staying with, because you have that aspect, and sometimes I do struggle to converse with some people because they just can't believe it. So it's nice sometimes to stay. I use Warm Showers, which is an app to other cyclists, host other cyclists. And a lot of them have done big challenges themselves, and they know what you need. You come through the door, here's the shower, here's food, here's a bed, go to sleep. And they just get it. And it is quite humbling, because sometimes they've done way more than you have. And so it's nice to have conversations with people who just get it. And this is my echo chamber at the moment at times. So Cairo to Cape Town will be the first one. The second one, that the same friend is now mopping up, the only one he hasn't done, which is London to Sydney, or Sydney to London. And you link all the way across Europe and through Asia, or you won't do Russia at the moment, but some people went into Russia before, all through, again, pick your route across Asia down to Singapore. And then he is like bouncing across islands in the Pacific to get down to Sydney. And into Australia. And I think
once to swim between the islands, or be on the water bike, or like what's
the back on the back? No, you're getting.
So that's allowed.
Yeah. Ferries tends to be the most. Different cyclists have different rules. Ferries are normally a transport that is not prohibited. Airlines and flying tend to be questionable. I've heard like stories of cyclists rocking up to the border and leaving their bike at the border with the police, because some countries you have to fly into. And then fly in, hike back to the border, and then pick up their bike.
Oh no!
Because putting the bike on a plane is cheating. So everybody has their own rules. Mine is, if it ever turns dangerous, I can accept a lift to get past the danger. But other than that,
and you will have to, not in Panama, but what is it in Colombia?
the Darien Gap that borders Panama and Colombia, you don't go through there.
So you're coming down. North America gets narrower and narrower. You go through Central America, then you hit Panama.
Yep.
What happens between Panama and Colombia?
Charter a ferry. So,
but why?
So the Darien Gap becomes essentially, and you cannot traverse the forestry. There are no roads through there. There are no routes. The only people that do go through there tend to be drug traffickers. And so inherently, either the wildlife or a drug trafficker will get hold of you. So it's just not a safe place to go through. Even if you did want to do it, you're bushwhacking. So bring a machete. But taking a tour bike through there laden with panniers and macheting through may not be the best idea. So yeah, I don't know any bike tourist that has decided that's the way, but that's why it's you cannot navigate it.
So you take a little ferry around it?
Yeah, you can go two ways, both into Colombia normally. Mine I'm not seeing as cheating because I will end up further north than I left at. So my plan is to go to either Cartagena or Barranquilla in Colombia and then kind of work down through the center of their country.
No. That's not a very long ferry.
I don't know actually how long it is.
Well,
I think
we'll find out.
My friend is he's a yachty down there, and he was saying that there is no major ferry at the moment. But I just give him a call and he'll sort me out. So right. I don't know what he's going to do. Just rock up on somebody.
Maybe a slow day for the drug dealers and
somebody else's boat. He's just going to rock up on and shut the bike up. I don't know. But I've got his number saved.
I bet. And then as you come down through South America, what's your plan?
So the original plan, it's a moving target. So that's the plan. I'll tell you the brief plan. So Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, into Bolivia, salt flats, down into Chile. I think Chile is 3,000 miles from top to bottom, all the way down to the bottom. And then you kind of jump back into Argentina right at the end. That is the plan. How I work things, even when I met you guys, I'd only planned the next kind of 7 days. Mm-hmm. Once you plan and set expectations, it's hard to move them. So I could have met you guys when we were having breakfast and you could say, well, if you go this way, you can do this, this, and this, and you can stay with my friend here. But if once you have a plan, you're kind of stuck to that and you find it hard to navigate away from it. So I like to leave it as open as I can so that I can take these suggestions from people and just roll with them. Otherwise you start to expect things along the way of what's going to happen, and it can be tough to kind of break that. So that is the plan. I've also then got the winter thing coming in, so potentially might have to slow down and explore different areas. And I'm even playing with the idea of staying in a South American city and learning a dance of some sort for a month just to get off the bike and do something different. So yeah, nothing set in stone. Everything is movable. Yeah. Not the opposite.
So of your experience so far, which is, call it, I don't know, a fifth of the entire experience, what was the best moment? What was the worst moment or the hardest moment so far?
The best and the worst. So we can say one of the moments I've already spoken about, and we'll call that both. So cycling through the Atican Pass was potentially one of the hardest because my fitness wasn't there.
That's on the Brooks Range?
Yes, okay. Yes. But also one of the best because it was like cycling through another world in the middle of a snowstorm, surfaces that you've never cycled on before, with a bike that, you're just about getting used to. It was crazy. So that was both at the same time. I would say if we put that to the side, the best section so far would have been the Sea to Sky highway, changing from mountainous to coastal to almost like Italian Mediterranean style roads was in one day in the baking sun was absolutely incredible.
So you came from Whistler down to Squamish, down to West Vancouver.
Yep. And I did that. It was like a 130 kilometer stretch in the baking sun in one day. And before that as well, coming through the arid kind of dry region with lakes and then climbing up to Ducky Lake. This whole stretch of highway has been awesome. The toughest part would have been, there was a 3 or 4 day stretch in Acacia where it didn't stop raining for 4 days. And I can tell you, being wet on a bike for long periods of time is just, not fun. Couldn't get dry, couldn't get warm. So the only thing you can do, and this is a popular phrase in the cycling community, especially bike touring, if you're not happy with the situation, just keep cycling. And that's all you can do at times. So if you're not happy with the camp spot you're at, just keep cycling. And you get to a point where it doesn't matter how tired you are, that rule just is always there. Nothing could go wrong if you just keep cycling.
So what got you through those 3 difficult days? I mean, obviously just keeping on cycling.
Yeah.
Just a belief that it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll get better. Like,
it's difficult. So I think that potentially that's where the mental strength comes in, because there are times where I'm very self-aware about why it's bad and knowing that that's temporary. So for a lot of the time, you're just pushing yourself through the cycle because you know when you stop, you can cook a warm dinner and you can get dry. So some of it you're just working towards the end of your almost cycling day because you know it's better once you stop. And so that's part of it, is knowing that it's only temporary. I'd say that's the major, I think that's the only up, as well as music. So there was one song that got me through that period.
What was it?
It's quite old, actually. I thought it was new. It was on a playlist I was listening to. It's a guy called Ian Munsick, Horses Are Faster. So it's a country song from about 10 years ago. And I think at one point I played it 7 times in a row and was screaming it as I was cycling down the road. Wow. So music helps.
What would you suggest to people who wanted to build their mental toughness? They want to do this, or they want to do something else, or they think they're coming up to a difficult period in their life and they'd like to try to build some mental toughness or in preparation. What would be your suggestion to them?
I'd say to build it up slowly. So to use cycling as an example for me, I knew what my goal was, to test myself harder before, so that on any one particular day, regardless of how hard it was never as hard as this. So that simplifies it completely. Depends what their goal is. But I would say you're testing your toughness before. So building up to this trip, I didn't just do, that 330 kilometer day straight away. For months before, I was each weekend pushing myself 10 kilometers further on rides and just building up endurance and cardiovascular strength as well as the mental toughness. Because you just, at some points, you are just sat in the saddle pushing yourself. And so I would say test it and push yourself gradually rather than just expecting yourself to turn up one day and be ready. I feel like that simplifies it in a sports way. It depends what they're building, I guess, mental stability for, or mental toughness for.
All right. How do people follow your journey? Because you've still got quite a bit to go here.
I do. I'm going to be posting a lot. So on Instagram, I am at Benson the Biking Viking. I have started vlogging my adventures as well, so I'm learning that. So go easy on me, but I'm Benson the Biking Viking on YouTube. And I also have a website where I write up if you prefer reading, and that's bensonthebikingviking.co.uk.
All right. And so those are longer posts, obviously.
Yeah, so it was more for my family back at home that aren't into the social media thing, just to be able to read. And I tend to post more pictures on there of kind of more detailed day to day. So, if I have a nice sandwich, it gets put up there.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Best of luck. And I hope some people listening and watching to this end up following your journey, because it's looked pretty incredible so far, and I can only imagine the places you'll go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.